सह वीर्यवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम सदाशिवसमारम्भां शंकराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ओम गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ओम सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। कार्पण्यदोषोपहतः स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेताः। यश्रेयस्यानिश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधिमां त्वां प्रपन्नम्। ॐ वाङ्मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविर्भावैर्मयेधि वेदस्य महानिस्तः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहास्ति। अनेन अधीतेन अहोरात्रां संददामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारम् अवतु अवतु मामवतु वक्तारम् अवतु वक्तारम्। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम अहं वृक्षस्य भद्रं पश्येम। ओम भद्रं ओम भद्रं ओम भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः।
ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवाङ्स्तनूभिः वागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति न पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्ताक्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिव कीर्तिः पृष्ठं गिरेरिव ऊर्ध्व पवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमृतम् अस्मि द्रविणगुं सर्वर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इति वचनम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Thanks, Rituj. Hey.
Narayan everyone.
Narayan. Wish you all a very happy new year.
Narayan. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And happy Pongal also today, Lori.
Lori,
Makar Sankranti, yeah, it was yesterday. Yeah.
Okay. So we stopped on shloka 30, chapter 9. Chapter 9, as we Like it's been a very long time, so we'll do a quick recap, not a full recap of the chapter. We want to finish this today. But basically, chapter 9 is the center of Gita, right? So, as somebody reminded us in the class yesterday, chapter 9 of Gita is like the pendant of the heart, of the necklace of the Gita. And shloka 9.22 is the gem in that pendant. Okay? So this is where Bhagwanji, so chapter 9 basically it tells us about the greatest open secret that has ever been out there. And what is that greatest open secret? It talks about the power that we all have, the power of the Lord, the power to connect to the power of the Lord, and our ability to see the truth as it is, and how apparent it is around all of us. And it is the greatest open secret, because even though it is all around us, we are unable to see it, we are unable to perceive it, because we do not have the right instruments in place. We do not are so we have the instruments, we've not tuned it correctly to be able to perceive it, right? And we are constantly deluded by the world around us. Okay, so moving on to shloka 31. Anything else I want to revise? Do you all remember shloka, this entire chapter, right? We will just go on with shloka 31, because 31 to 34 we are going to listen to Bhagwanji's assurances.
Just the context before we go to 31 is the last few preceding shlokas, and the greatest open secret that he talks about is Bhagwanji is everywhere. And the last few preceding shlokas, he's highlighted the many different examples in samsara in which he exists, right? And our inability to see it is our ego that comes in the way, that creates that individuality, right? So now we will talk a bit more about what happens if you are able to see it, what type of people, what type of bhakti you can have as we go along this journey. So if people are able to make that offering, make that connection, what happens then?
Kavita, you want to read?
So yeah, I think one other thing is, so the previous shloka we talked about how even a sinner, a person who's lived a life of sin, right? The moment he switches his perspective and he's able to connect with Bhagwanji, then he's absolved of his sins. And the example that I had given last time was that of Valmiki, right? Do you guys remember it, or should I repeat it real quick? Okay.
No, everybody remembers. Everybody knows.
Yeah, please.
And you can repeat it. If you can repeat it, please.
Yeah.
So, just 1 second. Did you finish it?
So Valmiki.
Okay. This is not very well done. Go. I'll take him. You use the story, or should I? Okay. Okay. So Valmiki, so he'd lived a life. He lived in a small village. He was quite financially not well off. So to support his family, his daughter, his kids, and his wife, he became a petty thief. And eventually his place of doing robbery was in the forest. So people would walk across the forest, and these would be merchants, these would be wealthy people. So he would catch them in the forest. And he would extort money out of them. So one day when he went to the forest, a group of saints were passing by. Okay. So he stopped them, jumped on them, and asked them for money. But because these were realized saints, they touched a part of him where he felt inspired, or he felt moved. And the saint said, I want to be like you. So the saint said, all you have to do is say the word Rama. But Valmiki, because he was so steeped, and his mind was so steeped in sin and sansar, he couldn't even say God's name. So then the saint told him, okay, don't say Rama, say Mara. And he just said, Aap bas Mara ka jaap karte raho. Just keep saying Mara over and over again as a chant. And if you say it, Mara, 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 you're effectively saying Rama itself. Right? And just by saying God's name, he achieved self-realization and wrote Ramayana. Right? And that was an example that he said that is given on how a person who is steeped in sin can also achieve self-realization within one life itself. Right? So now we'll read a few more examples. I think just. So yeah, let's read the connection before 30. Kavita, yeah.
What happens to a person whose life had earlier been steeped in sin and who later on worships the God wholeheartedly? The Lord answers.
Yeah, so this I just explained in that Valmiki example. This was the last shloka that we've read. So the connection before 31. 31.
Oh, 31, before 31. The Lord now describes the attainment of such a person.
So in this shloka, we'll talk about what is experienced when the person becomes one with God. You just have to wait for a minute for Tuya to come. Just 1 second.
Where are we?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to read it?
Yeah.
Kshipram bhavati dharmatma.
Shipram bhavati dharmatma.
Shashvachantim nigacchati.
Shashvachantim nigashchati.
Kaunteya pratijana janihi.
Kaunteya pratijanihi.
Name bhakta pranashyati.
Name bhakta pranashyati.
Kshipram means quickly, shighrahi. Bhavati ho jata hai, becomes. Dharmatma, righteous. Shashvat Shanti, Shashvat and Shanti. Shashvat means everlasting, sada rehne wali, everlasting. Shanti, peace. Nigachhati, प्राप्त होता है, attains. कौन्तेय, कुंती पुत्र अर्जुन. प्रति जाना ही, निश्चय पूर्वक सत्य के साथ जान. Know it for certain. न मे bhaktah pranashyati. My bhakt, my devotee, never. My devotee me bhaktah na, does not. Pranashyati, nasht hota hai, does not get to ruination. Right? Ruination.
Such a person soon becomes righteous and attains everlasting peace. O Kaunteya, know it for certain that my devotee never suffers ruination. Everlasting peace, attainment of a devotee. The highly encouraging assurance given in the shloka may evoke doubt about the result of sinful activities done earlier by such a devotee. Would not such a devotee be liable to suffer the results of vile acts done prior to starting on the path of rectitude? The answer is that once the feeling of devotion takes root in the heart, the effects of all the vile acts done earlier becomes infructuous, just as all acts done in a dream become infructuous in the wakeful state. Even while undergoing the effect of vile acts done previously, the strong feeling of devotion makes such effects to be faced boldly and cheerfully. This follows from the assurance of the Lord that his devotee never suffers ruination and attains everlasting peace.
So, 2 or 3 things here, right? The first is, while he's given us the assurance that whatever karma we have, the sins that we've incurred, as long as we connect with him, we do yoga and we connect with Bhagwanji, all of that can be absolved. But for us in this path, we all are already reading the Gita, right? We are already on this bhakti yoga. It is, this shloka is not referring to us saying we can do sin and continue to do sin. That is agyan, that is wrong knowledge. Now that you have the Gita and you have the right principles, it is our first most duty to implement these principles in our life and bring awareness and mindfulness to every action. It is not, so don't look at this shloka and say, oh, I can continue to do sin, or aage jaake Bhagwan mujhe maaf kar lenge. Like I continue to sing and later on I'll just ask for, I'll connect with God and I'll get absolved. That is not the way to understand this at all. Because we now have the right knowledge, it becomes our first and foremost duty to implement that knowledge in our lives. The second thing which I want to highlight here was that the reason why he says my devotee never suffers ruination is because of a concept called yogakshem, right? And in that, he basically says, whatever spiritual journey you or knowledge you collect, he helps protect that knowledge from life to life to life, so that you get circumstances in your current situation for you to continue building on that spiritual knowledge, right? So that's why he says, if you become my devotee, I will always protect that piece of you, that piece of spiritual knowledge that you have attained, so that you can continue walking this path towards eventual goal. That makes sense?
Yeah, that part that you're saying, right? Like, so Shuk and Shanak, Shuk and Sanak, right? Out of those 4 boys, the early sons of Brahma, Shuk and Sanak, they represent the detached energies inside of us that take us to the Lord. So like Abhinav said, that he will protect these energies, the Shuk and the Sanak inside of us, to make sure that they come to fore and that they are never ruined, and that he will do the yogakshem of these and be able to take us towards him. So these are the tendencies that will take us towards the Lord. And all of us have that Shuk and Sanak inside of us. Okay, you want to read the next one?
Okay. Shloka 30 and 31 deal with cases of those persons who had earlier been engaged in villainous activities and who become devotees subsequently. But there are several persons who are born in ignoble families on account of sinful acts of previous lives. There they grow in highly depraved environments full of violence and sin. Some people, though not born in ignoble families, have a degenerate nature, and for their livelihood, they have to live in an atmosphere where righteous thoughts have no scope to grow. For such people, the Lord says,
Mahi Partha Vyapashritya
Mahi Partha Vyapashitya
Ye api syu papa yonayaha
Ye Pishu Papa Yonayaha
Striyo Vaishyastata Shudraha
Striyo Veshyastata
Shudraha
Shudraha
Te api yanti param gatim
Ti Piyati Param God. Sorry, one more time.
Te api yanti param gatim
te api yanti param gatim.
Mam he, because my. Parth is Arjun. Vyapashritya, Sharan Hokar, taking refuge. Yeah, Pap Yonaha, those who have Pap Yoni or have a mean birth. Striyo, so these are the type of mean birth that are being referred to here. Stri, Vaishya, Shudra, Teapi Yanti Param Gatim, they too attain the supreme state.
O Partha, by taking refuge in me, a person of mean birth, resulting from reprobate acts of previous lives, attains the supreme state, not accepting women or persons belonging to the Vaishya or Shudra Varnas.
Yeah. So I think the first thing to understand is what do you mean by mean birth? Okay, there is no birth that is mean per se, right? What is being referred to is what are the circumstances that are around a person, the environment in which a person is born, and how much opportunity it affords to the person to engage in Brahman type of activities. What are Brahman type of activities? We had done in chapter, I think 4, we had read about the Varnas, right? So in Varnas, it was explained that Varnas are based on people's actions, propensities, your talents, what you are really good at, right? And so for the sake of organizing, the society was divided up into 4 main Varnas, right? So Brahman was the type of people who are able to spend a lot of time reading scriptures, and ensuring that the right type of rituals, the right type of activities are done correctly. And they would guide, because they have read the scriptures, they would guide other people on what is the right way to live life, or what is the dharma, right? So they preach the dharma. So that is a Brahmanic way of life. But as we all know, because of we have to live life, so you can't just do one type of activity. In our own time, when we are reading Gita, when we are doing any kind of reading, we are being a Brahman at that point of time, right? But then we also become a Vaishya, we also become a Shudra, depending on the activity that we need to do during the day. We are cooking, cleaning, that becomes a Shudra activity, right? And then when we are indulging in any kind of commerce, and when we are going to office, when we are doing all the regular work, that time we are being Vaishya, right? So all those 4 Varnas are depicted in our own daily lives, right? We are all 4 of them. Similarly, now this is at a micro level. At a macro level also, there are larger classes for organization's sake. Now, as you can imagine, a person who is required to do a certain type of activity, he will be equipped with an environment that is best suited for that activity. That means a person who is, for example, a child, when he is able to go to school and spend hours and hours studying and preparing for the life before, after that is supposed to come in adulthood, that opportunity is not available to an adult, right? When you have completely different set of duties to do, right? Similarly, a person who is born into who's working in a bank, or a person who is running a company, or a person who is a professor, or a person who is maybe a person who's an administrator of a particular place, right? All of these people have very different types of environments, right? So that environment will give them different opportunities to do certain types of things. Okay, so a mean birth means a person who is anything but a Brahmin, who can actually indulge himself and a lot of his time, because of the nature of his environment, and he's being paid to do that he can just sit and he can just read scriptures, he can do yagyas and all of those activities, right? So though they are being referred to as mean birth. Okay, so that where the environment is less than perfect to get there. Now, those are being referred to here. And then Bhagwanji says, does not matter what your environment is, you will have an equal opportunity, and the same opportunity will be afforded to you, although through different means. Okay, to get to the Lord, to achieve the Gyan, to be able to perceive the truth as it is. And the depending on your environment, what you're required to do will change, and your bar will also go higher. Okay, it's like when you're doing charity, a person who has millions of dollars, if he gives a 10 rupee charity versus a person who does not have that kind of a thing, and when he gives his 10 rupee charity, the bar applied to both is very different. For someone giving that 10 rupee charity is a huge thing, and Bhagwanji will look at it as if like he has given his entire life of charity to him. Whereas somebody else, like somebody who's very rich, he gives 10 rupee charity, he'll be looked at as a stingy person, right? So Bhagwanji's grace on him will be very different, correct? So the amount does not matter. The bar is going to be different in terms of the activities you will do. What does not change, however, is the bhav. Right? Bhav is something that is independent of the environment outside of you. And so as long as we cultivate the right bhav, then the environment doesn't matter. And it has been referred to again and again and again in different parts of Gita. For example, when you were talking about yajna, Bhagwanji, he told us that you don't have to do like for, in this chapter itself, we've read that to attain anything of worldly importance, if we have to follow the yajnas that have been explained in the various Vedas, there's a lot of effort required, a lot of material, a lot of resources, a lot of time, right? And but for doing the yajna to attain Bhagwanji, he says you don't need any of this stuff, right? Even if it's a little leaf, a flower, or just a simple prayer, that is enough. So the resources are not important, right? So he's told us this again and again and again. What is most important is the bhav. Your environment, all of these are excuses. I can't do this because I don't have time, because we all know our reasons, right? We all have always 100 reasons why we can or cannot do something. We always are very reasonable set of people with very reasonable set of reasonings. So in this chapter, we find that there are no circumstances, no set of environment, and no reasons why we cannot reach Bhagwanji, cannot achieve the right bhakti or the right gyan. Okay, we'll read.
I think Ritu has a
Yeah,
question.
there's a question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not a question, just something I had read a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if it applies to here, but it's like a boat on a sea. The idea is to be the boat, and the sea signifies the chaos in our life. And to sail in the boat, the best way for it to sail is we don't have to allow the water to come inside the boat or the environment. So that the boat keeps sailing. So we are surrounded by chaos in our environment, but we don't have to let it affect us and let it come. And our bhav, or as you say, to be connected. I think that maybe that analogy works with what you're saying.
It does. So it's a very nice example. Thank you, Ritesh. Water does not come inside.
Yeah.
Equal
And just to
equal
add to it,
rights.
oh, sorry. Can I just add
Oh, no
to
problem,
it?
no problem. Go ahead.
So like, is the boatman God, Bhagwanji, or your guru, like when you are traveling through that, like you can also add that to what Ritu said, like the sea around is the chaos and you are in the boat. And if you have God or your guru to guide you, isn't it an easier travel through that chaos period?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's exactly what Arjun did in the chariot as well, right? He's taking the chariot to war, but who is driving the chariot? Bhagwanji. Right? So he can navigate war, he can navigate such a gross and mean environment as Tuina is mentioning, and still attain God. Right? So yeah, if you keep your boatman as Bhagwanji, then no matter what the storm is, the boatman is the most experienced on how to navigate it. Wonderful. Brilliant thought.
And for us, when we think of our guru is what? Our guru is Gita. That's important, right? See, you've got all the answers that you ever need, any guidance that you need in Gita.
equal rights of all in self-realization. In this shloka, the Lord demonstrates the glory of devotion and of self-surrender to Him. He asserts that even persons living under adverse moral environments and those following vocations devoid of intellectual sublimity are put to no disadvantage in the matter of self-realization, provided they spend their lives in total surrender and devotion to the Lord. The reason is that those who are compelled on account of their birth or vocations to live under adverse and immoral environments have no scope of exposure to the sanctifying influence of righteous company or guidance. Such persons have no chance of being inspired to perform yajnas or other virtuous acts. Notwithstanding this, a person taking refuge in the Lord and surrendering the results of daily activities to Him with a sense of dedication attains to the sublime state. The use of the words woman, Vaishya, and Shudra in this shloka evokes doubts in the minds of some persons. According to them, the mention of these words along with the words mean birth creates an impression that women, Vaishyas, and Shudras are to be considered of mean birth. According to Vedic concepts, birth and the environment in which birth takes place are the results of actions done in past lives. However, being born as human being itself is a factor that entitles a person to attain self-realization, provided.
So underline this line, right? However, being born as a human being itself is a factor that entitles a person to attain self-realization, which means if you are born in human form, that means you've already done something good in your past for you to get this opportunity. And within the human form, if you have a mean birth, that is still a small experience compared to being born in an animal form, where you don't even get offered that opportunity.
No, but even then, you have to realize that the reason you're born in a certain environment is because that environment is the best environment for you to attain to Bhagwanji. You need to, it is creating the perfect things that you need to for the perfect circumstances you need to experience for the vasanas that you have to come outside of you, to be able to see them clearly and then be able to work on them. It's the shortest path. You could not have gotten a better environment to work on yourself and to attain to Bhagwanji in the fastest way possible. Yeah, so it may be mean from a perspective that it is not affording you the perfect
comfort, respect, or whatever.
No, perfect environment to do the yagyas or to read the scriptures, etc. But it is perfect for you to learn what your vasanas are and to be able to work on them.
Please continue.
However, being born as a human being itself is a factor that entitles a person to attain self-realization, provided proper discipline is followed with a sense of devotion to the Lord. Of course, amongst human beings, also there are different environmental placements, but these cannot forfeit the right of human being to be devoted to the Lord and to attain self-realization. Thus, if the environment leaves no scope for education, culture, or virtuous conduct, the teachings of the scriptures or performance of yajnas would be beyond the reach of such a person. This is a description of reality and is in no way a condemnation. The shloka only says that a person performing all daily duties of life with devotion and with dedication would attain the same supreme state as is attained by any erudite scholar well versed in the scriptures. In fact, realization of God is the right of everyone, and as such, it should be within the reach of everyone. But indifference to the Lord and total absorption in thoughts of worldly matters make the realization of God a very difficult task. The Lord does not look at a person's financial or social status, but He values the intentions and feelings of devotion. The scriptures speak of Dharma Vyatya, who was engaged in this hereditary occupation of selling meat, but his spirit of self-surrender was so intense that even the sage Jajali sought guidance from him.
So the one thing I'd like to add, right, what I find very interesting about India as a country, right? One of the reasons why we have temples everywhere, right? Like in the middle of the road sometimes, in mountain, in treetops, and being from urban city,
You can
I
go.
always go drive in, it's creating a traffic jam, right? Right in Powai, for example, there is a huge temple in the middle of a junction, and that creates a one-lane road on both sides. And your experience always is it's creating traffic jam. But one of the things I've come to realize is the reason why India has such gross festivals, so many temples, so many forms. It's just a way and a reminder for people to connect to God. No matter what their circumstances in a country like India, you cannot escape the spiritual experience, right? So there is, like, if nothing else, there will be such a big festival that will come, like Ganesh, like Ganpati Utsav or whatever, that will create that connection somewhere, somehow. You never know how it sparks other people to turn towards them. It could be ritualistic, it could be all of that, but all of these are just check marks and reminders for people as they see and interact their environment, right? And I always find that you can see those things with irritation, like I would, or you can actually see it saying, hey, it's just a reminder for me to connect to Bhagwanji in that moment, but also for somebody else who might inspire to turn to God, right? Please continue, Vijay.
Self-realization dependent on intensity of devotion only. Sex and varna are no considerations. As explained by the Lord in shloka 13 and of chapter 4, the four divisions, varnas, are determined by natural traits, gunas, and the nature of action, karmas, based on them. It is usually seen in the world that a person with expertise in spiritual studies and religious activities, typifying a brahmana, or a person of a warrior class, typifying a kshatriya, are accorded somewhat high respect in society compared to that accorded to persons engaged in the vocations of other two divisions, varnas, vaishya, and shudra. Women too are generally confined to performance of their natural duties of bringing up children and of looking after their households. It is difficult for them to observe the rigid disciplines necessary for scriptural studies. However, Vedic history mentions the names of women like Gargi and Maitreyi, who were well versed in the Vedas. But the great Adiguru Shankaracharya held a scriptural debate with the scholar Mandana Mishra. All the assembled scholars opined that only Ubaya Bharati, the latter's wife, was competent to act as the judge in the debate between them. This makes it clear that women were not considered to be of inferior status to men as far as scriptural knowledge was concerned. Only looking to their distinctive functions, the study of the Vedas was not incumbent on them. The same principle applies to the functional divisions of Vaishyas and Shudras. The subject is dealt with in detail in the second chapter of the sixth canto of Sri Vishnu Purana, to which a reference can be made if required. In the present shloka, emphasis has been laid on the equal rights of everyone to achieve the supreme state by devotion and self-surrender to the Lord.
So, yeah, Rituj, ask your question. You're on mute, brother.
No, I was just thinking that this shlok is more like a starting point in a way for anyone who starts their Gita journey, because we all like what I realized is that through the Gita, it's like a mirror and you see a reflection of yourself and you see all the flaws that are in you. So clearly, sinful and all the sins that we are, it gives hope to everyone that you come to Gita trying to, better your life and get on the spiritual path. So I was just thinking that this shlok, in a way, even though it's in the middle of the Gita, is like a starting point for any person who starts their Gita journey. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's right or not.
No, I think it's an interesting perspective. What I was going to highlight was something similar, which is there are two aspects. One, when we read this from today's context, of course, we all know all of us are created equal. Of course, we all know as long as you're human body, human form, all of us are capable of achieving anything and everything that we put our mind and effort, right? But we also have to appreciate that the context of this is written 3,500 to 4,000 years ago, where the roles and identity of people were perceived very differently, right? And in that, in a gross form, he was saying, hey, as long as you're human, you are all equal, right? But the subtler aspect, which is what Rituj is trying to also highlight, the subtler aspect is all of these different types of people exist inside of us. All of these different traits of people, all of these weaknesses that human beings have, we all share those weaknesses inside of us. But that shouldn't stop us from going onto the path. Bhagwanji is saying you all are welcome as you are right now. Your subtle energy, if it's a particular direction, if it's not positive, it doesn't matter. You are all welcome. Come and start the journey. So yeah, in a way, Rituj, that's how it ties to what you were saying earlier.
It is also an assurance, right? Because a lot of times what happens is that you start reading, and then you start to try and practice all the principles, right? Start with a lot of custom. And then somewhere around the middle, you're like, okay, I'm trying to do stuff, but it doesn't seem to make sense. I can't seem to do it. I want to do Swadhyay, but I have all of these hundreds of reasons why I can't do it. Or, we have all our reasons, right? Which come up again and again. So we basically hit life. We meet life, and then we realize that all of these issues happen, and then we come up with our reasons. And that's what Bhagwanji is saying. It does not matter what your external environment is. You all have the right, you have the ability to reach me. So he's giving that assurance again and again and again to us in different ways. Why in different ways? Because we all have a different reason or a different energy pattern inside of us that is probably preventing us from moving forward. So we will identify with the right reasoning, or we'll identify with a different shloka that will enable us to see who we are, or who we are being, or what is stopping us, or what is that energy pattern inside of us that we need to release and let go. End of the day, everything, whatever we are facing in our lives, or whatever circumstances we have in our lives, the one thing that will help us all is Nam Jap. Nam Jap, constant Nam Jap. The more you are hitting problems in your life, the more important Nam Jap is for you. If you feel, I don't have the bhakti, I don't see Bhagwanji anywhere, I'm not able to see Bhagwanji in a certain VVGP, whatever be this thing, right? I can recognize my demons inside of me that I need to fight, but I'm unable to handle them. I am unable to, like, okay, I understand it intellectually, but when the situation comes, I still behave habitually. Whatever be the thing that we are dealing with, internal or external, the answer is Nam Jap. We can't do it alone. Without Nam Jap, what we're trying to say is that, oh, I have reliance on my own self, on my own ego, and I have the capability to handle this. We don't, right? When we are relying on our own energy, it's a very finite, small amount of energy, which is going to get dissipated in 25 different directions. But when we are able to connect to that infinite source of energy, that source of energy has more energy than the energy required for any number of issues that we need to handle. Okay, and that will cleanse, and that will cleanse every single thing, stuff that we don't even think is possible for us to manage or handle. He will provide the energy. Just the Nam Jap. It seems very simplistic, but it is, and that is part of this being the open secret, no? It is so simple to solve for your life problems and to move past your life problems, but we think, oh no, it has to be complicated. We overcomplicate our lives. It can't be something as simple as this, and so we don't do it enough. We'll do 1 mala, 2 mala, 5 mala, 10 mala, and say, okay, this is enough. No, it is not. Depending on what you're looking at doing, you should constantly be looking to upgrade your number of malas and not just do it for the number of anushtans. You have to do it constantly. It has to become a part of life. If you're doing 10 today, do 12 tomorrow. keep on increasing your capacity, and you will see your capacity increase as the capacity to do your Nam Jap increases, as it becomes a part of daily activity. That every second in your mind, while you're engaged in the daily activity, every second all you're doing is Nam Jap, you will start to see the internal resistances melt away. And as your internal consciousness is going to change, your external environment will change accordingly, because your ability to interact and the way you interact with your external environment will 100% change. Everything outside of us is a reflection of what is inside of us. There is nothing else. So there is nothing outside of us that needs to change. There's nothing outside of us that we need to improve upon. We need to change ourselves. And that will change the way we interact with the environment outside, which will bring about a lot of change. And the only way is to seek reliance and self-surrender on Nam Jap. We'll go.
Yeah.
We're done, right? We're done with this.
We're done with this, yeah.
So the next one, Sweta, you want to read?
Sure. Stressing this principle, the Lord now mentions the pure-hearted Brahmins and king sages, Rajashris.
Kim pun brahmana punya.
Kim punar brahmana punya.
Bhakta rajarshasthatha.
Bhakta rajarashyata.
Bhakta rajarshasthatha.
Bhakta rajarshayasthatha.
Anityam asukham lokam.
Anityam asukham lokam.
Imam prapya bhajasva mam.
Imam prapya bhajasva mam.
Is what? Pun is fair. To say, basically then. Then. What then to say? Brahmana, Brahman. Punya, pure. Bhakta, devout or devotee. Rajashri is the king sages, the Rajashris. Tatha, and. Anityam, kshana bhangur, transient. Asukham, devoid of all happiness. Lokam, imam, this world of taking the human form, right? Prapya, prapt hokar, having gotten or having attained. Bhajasva mam, worship me.
What to say of the pure-hearted Brahmins and the devout king sages? Having landed in this transient and joyless world, worship me devoutly. The self-surrender of pure-hearted Brahmins and devout Rajashris. In the first line of this shloka, the Lord reveals that it is easy for the pure-hearted Brahmins and the devout Rajashris to attain the supreme state by self-surrender and dedication to the Lord. In the second line, it is pointed out that though this human body is an abode of painful ailments and is transient and momentary, worship of the Lord and self-surrender will enable any person to attain the supreme state. For this, there is no need to await any particular age or circumstances of life. Some people think that worship of Lord is only for the old age. But how does one know that death would not strike one in youth? Secondly, if the entire life is spent in thinking of the worldly enjoyments, thoughts about them would be fixed in the mind so strongly that it would be well nigh impossible to turn them towards the Lord in the later stages of life.
And I think the last part is even more important for us to remember, that you have to start as early as the opportunity that is afforded to us, which means that we need to make sure that we provide that right environment to even our children, however young they may be, right? So you start them early. It's so much easier for children to pick up new things because their tumbler is not full of dirty water yet. So their tumbler tends to get full much faster with clean water than us, who have taken on years and decades of filled our tumblers with dirty water, which we have to empty out. Nivratti first before pravratti. So we have to empty first of the notions we have built up about what is the right way of living, and only then we can clean it up with the right sanskars. So the longer we wait, the harder it is for us to let go of the wrong notions we pick up along the way. Habits, right? Habits become more and stronger and stronger and stronger.
It's also a reminder that it is much easier for us to attain this if we continue to stay in the sattvic state, in the Brahman state. If we indulge in a lot of Rajasic, a lot of Tamagun states, then it is much harder for us to see Bhagwanji there. And it is much harder for us to bring him into our lives. But if we devote our mind to be slightly more sattvic on a daily basis, then all of a sudden it becomes easier for you to connect with Bhagwanji. So you perceive the shloka to your own state of mind and where, how much time you spend in what state in a given day.
So in the previous shloka, there was this line, right, which says that people who do or people who are typifying a Brahman or a Kshatriya are accorded a somewhat high respect in society compared to other two divisions, right? The reason is because the expectation is that the people belonging to Brahman or Kshatriya Varnas will afford themselves a higher standard of living, what they aspire to, who they are being, at the bhav level, at the action level, is much higher. You expect a Brahman to always speak the truth, whereas you don't expect the same standard from a Shudra, right? So when we are being the Brahman or the Kshatriya, we have to afford ourselves, we have to raise our consciousness, we have a higher responsibility to ourselves, to hold ourselves to a higher standard, or at every level, bhav, action, what we expect ourselves to stick to do when life throws certain situations to us. Book 34. So, who wants to read? Bhagyashree, you'll read with us?
Yes. The Lord describes the way to this self-surrender.
Man mana bhava mad bhaktah.
Man mana bhava mad bhakto.
Mad
Bhaktah.
Yeah. Madhyaji mam namaskuru.
Madhyaji mam namaskuru.
Mame vyashyasi yuktai.
Mame vyashasi yukte.
Avamatmanam matparayanaha.
Avamatmanam matparayanaha.
Manmana is manmana bhava, putting your mind in me. Mad bhakta, devoted to me. Madhyaji mam, Madhyaji is worships or dedicates to me. Mam namaskuru, salutations to me, namaskar to me. Mame vashyasi, you shall attain me. Yukta vaiva matmanam is unifying yourself to me. Mat parayanaha, you will, sorry, so mat parayanaha is, completely dependent on me.
Keep your mind filled with my thoughts. Be devoted to me. Dedicate all your yajnas to me. Bow down in salutation to me, thus unifying yourself with me and taking me as the supreme goal, you shall attain me.
So here, before we continue reading, I'll remind you of the example I had shared in one of the previous shlokas, which is very relevant here. And it's very easy for us to understand because all of us, most of us are parents. So when a baby is born and when the baby is really small, that baby is fully dependent on parents of, let's say, mother. The baby is fully dependent on mother for survival. Correct? Every waking minute, that baby, everything it does for parents. If mother is not around for a little bit, it gets anxious and it wants to bring mother back. And when the baby is anxious, or if like your 2-year-old baby is walked out of the house and is not in mother's eye for like 5 or 6 minutes, the mother will get anxious to go look for the child. And that child will be anxious because he wants to be back with his mother, right? As the child grows older, what happens? The child becomes more independent. They tend to become more responsible. They tend to become independent. So the same child who is 20 years old, and suppose he has not come back from school yet, the mother will not be that anxious. She'll be like, oh, he must have gone for a coffee with his friends, or must have gone for a movie. He'll come back. It's still 4 o'clock in the evening. He'll come back by evening. And that same child no longer worries and thinks about the mother, right? So what happens is, as the child becomes bigger, they become more individualistic. So they become less attached to the mother. Now, change this example between God and us. If we become that child and toddler who keep God in all our thoughts, then God will come and rush to us at every given moment. Right? अगर आप किसी का नाम बोलते रहोगे, mama, 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 like eventually mother will come. Same thing with God. आप नाम बोलते रहोगे, eventually he will come. And the more connected you are, the more he will take care of you. That is the law of nature. That is how it's designed. So when you read these 4 steps of self-surrender, as a parent, visualize how your child was when he was 2, 3, 4, and you will see it's the exact same principle. And that's why they say mother-child love is the most pure love, because it's a reflection of how God feels for us. And we all say we're God's children. But for us to be with God, all he asks is our surrender, us turning back to him. Right? Now let's read the explanation with this thought in mind.
The 4 steps to self-surrender. In this shloka, the 4 steps to self-surrender have been outlined thus. First, mind filled with the thoughts of the Lord. Remembering the Lord always will keep the mind filled with his thoughts. It does not mean that no thought should be given to the requirements of duty, but if duties themselves are regarded as being enjoined by the Lord, then giving thought to them would automatically make the mind think of the Lord.
Yeah, so let me give, so in the beginning of our class, right, there was, on our side, there was a lot happening on the Rajuguni side, right, with my son coming every 3 minutes for his attention. I had given him homework to do. And I said, homework, you finish your homework and then you can watch a little bit of TV while our class is going on. Every time he was disturbing, he was showing me the progress he made in his homework. Right? Now, imagine this. His mind is filled with us. He's expressing that love towards us as parents that Bhagwanji wants from us. Right? And how beautiful is that? Right? So Bhagwan saying, as long as you keep expressing your love to me in every task, every line of your homework, go show it to Bhagwanji. Every email that you write, say, Bhagwanji, this email was for you. Every contract that gets signed, Bhagwanji, aap aake help the business, help my clients flourish. Every contract that doesn't get signed, Bhagwanji, please take care of them. Hope they continue to flourish. If you do it that way, then that's exactly what devotion to Bhagwanji is. That's the first step. Right? Sorry, continue.
Second, devotion to the Lord. To be never dissociated from the Lord is being devoted to the Lord. Dissociation from the Lord immediately results in association with the mischiefs of the world. This is a great misfortune. Devotion to the Lord obviates this misfortune.
Yeah, so I think this is something we've talked about in the past as well, is your mind can either be attached to Sansar or Bhagwan.
Nothing in between.
There's nothing in the middle. And it's never both. It's either Sansar, it's either world and worldly objects, or it's God. Right? So the second step of surrender is us being extremely conscious of where we are devoting our mind. Either we are associating our mind to Bhagwanji or we are associating our mind to Sansara.
Third, dedication of yajnas to the Lord. Worship of the Lord includes chanting and singing his name and reciting hymns to his glory. But performance of duties and actions for livelihood with dedication amounts to dedication of yajnas to him.
Yeah. So coming back to the devotion to the Lord, right? I forgot to give the child example. The child example is here, the child does not think of itself as a separate entity to mom and dad till they grow much older. They think they're one with the mother, right? So in a situation, and again, if you have a small child around, observe. Put the child and the mother in a new experience. The child will look at that new experience and then immediately look at the mother's face. If the mother is happy, the child will smile. If the mother looks scared, the child will be scared because the child is the mother. That's how the child knows when to be upset, when to be happy, when to be angry, because they copy the mother's emotions. Right? So the association from a devotion perspective on a child is very, very deep. And the third part, which is dedication of yagnas, everything a child does is for parents' pleasure. And like we now, a lot of us, therapy and stuff has become very normal. And when it all comes down, when you go into these in psychology, they all say, hey, they did not feel they got their parents' approval. All they wanted was parents' time or attention or love, right? That creates this huge chasm in a person's conflict. And that same thing, same principle exists in Gita towards God. Right? Everything we do, we are offering for him. Just like a child, everything they do is for our pleasure.
Fourth, bowing in salutation to the Lord. For self-surrender, it is necessary to have a conviction that bowing in salutation to the Lord and begging for his grace is an essential part of devotion. Some people think that since the Lord is omnipresent, he knows everyone's feeling, and to offer salutations to him would only be a formality. It is true that salutation is a posture of the body, but the salutation referred to here is that which is accomplished by the mind and the intellect. Even this salutation should be accompanied by a feeling that the human mind is an abode of shortcomings, and these shortcomings can be overcome only with the grace of the Lord.
So this last line you should definitely underline, because it's again highlighting that as long as we are in human form, we will not be perfect. We'll be, in fact, far from perfect. Right? But that should not stop our commitment. Just like no child is perfect. But when that child has a strong relationship with the parent, it is the parent that helps the child overcome whatever weaknesses, tendencies, etc. they have for them to be a happy and effective person of society. Right? And that is exactly what Bhagwanji is saying. That part of self-surrender is having the humility of accepting that I am imperfect and I bow down to you with my imperfection to guide me and take care of me. And that bowing is very necessary for us to disassociate with ego, our oldest friend and greatest obstacle in the journey.
These four attitudes lead to total dependence on the Lord while engaged in selfless and assiduous discharge of duty. The Lord holds out the assurance that adopting these attitudes in life, the devotee is always unified with the Lord and is ultimately merged in him.
Close the chapter. Okay. So with that, we'll close the chapter. The last thing I would say is that chapter 9 is the middle of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti and Gyan are incomplete without each other. Bhakti properly done will lead to Gyan, and Gyan will always take you back to Bhakti. Bhakti without Gyan leads to blind faith, leads to fanaticism. Okay? And Gyan without Bhakti leads to a lot of ego. They are incomplete without each other. So the whole idea, which is why thus far, everything we have read, even though this is Bhakti Yoga, is trying to teach us the truth, what to look for that is going to create Bhakti inside of you once you really, really begin to understand it. Once you understand these secrets, Bhakti will flow. So it is all about perceiving the truth. At no point of time does Bhagwanji talk about blind faith. That is, a blind faith is in fact the very antithesis of Gita. It is leading to Gyan. It is leading to true knowledge. It is leading to perception. Faith that translates into correct perception, correct knowledge. And then that transforms itself back into Bhakti. That is what it is about, like what is the right type of knowledge to get. Reading Gita, learning all 900 shlokas, knowing all the artis, doing all the yagyas is not true knowledge. True knowledge is that which will help us really perceive Bhagwanji, being able to perceive unity in duality. And once we are able to do it naturally, then there is a unification of the world, and then there is no difference between you and me. And when that truth is perceived correctly, it automatically leads to Bhakti, because then you can see the enormity of Bhagwanji, you can see his grace. Yeah, Rituj.
Just one line that I've read, that shelf knowledge should become self knowledge. So I think it's just the knowledge that you need to implement and practice, because then it just is of no thing. And also one thing about Nam Jap and the power of it, just that I used to get very frustrated, especially on the Delhi roads when you have a lot of traffic. And, my reaction to it was like, oh my God, why am I stuck in traffic and what? Now with Nam Jap, I think it's just an opportunity to increase my Nam Japs and the number of malas, because all that time of waiting is like an opportunity that, okay, I can just sit and just keep, doing that. And I could get like a lot done in that thing. So I think it's just all about perspective and how you see situations. So yeah, that's it.
Amazing example. Incredible.
Close the chapter. Om Tat Siddhiti Srimad Bhagavad Gitasu Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjun Samvade Raj Vidya Raj Guhya Yogona Navmo Adhyayah. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat.
Um,
Do you want to start chapter 10, or do you want to talk about last chapter?
No, one of the things we've not done is actually introduce all this, which we were supposed to do. So we can do this, but we can also start the chapter, I think, introduction. Okay.
So next Sunday, obviously, we will not be doing our class because it's the weekend of Ras Leela. So Kunj Bihari Bhaiya and his entire Ras Leela group is coming. They are arriving on Wednesday night.
So
night.
I'll just put the pictures up.
So they are arriving on Wednesday night, and Thursday evening onwards the Ras Leela starts. Right? So the first Ras Leela is on Thursday evening, and then followed by Friday morning, evening, Saturday morning, evening. That will be the last Ras Leela there. And then Sunday, there would be a satsang at Sovereign, where we will be able to meet Didi Ma and Kunj Bihari Bhaiya. We will be able to get their darshan. So
Sure.
next weekend there would be no class. After that, we are traveling for 2 weeks, 2 weekends. We are out. So
Yeah, so I think I really don't like the idea, to be honest, of taking another break from class. We will try, I think we have to figure out where we are going to be on those 2 Sundays.
Yeah.
Because we don't know right now what our itinerary is. We're going for a shadi into Indore. So depending what will be closer to end of this week, we'll know exactly where we are going to be and whether we'll have this space to take the class, and we'll communicate that well in advance. But it could be that we might miss one, if not both the classes. We'll request Krishna to make it happen, and then we'll see how that goes.
and then so we come back February 7th. So after that, anyway, the regular roster will start. But before that, also, I think the first 2 classes before that, we will definitely try and make that happen. If Krishna wants it to happen. So that's that. How many of us are attending
Ras Leela.
Ras Leela in person? Kavita, you will be there. Smita will be there.
Kakoli,
No, she's not able to
She's
come,
not.
right? Because there are a lot of steps also, and
Yeah.
too many people. So yeah, there's
K
restriction.
also signed up. I think K will also be there. She's gone off.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, this so this Ras
Bhageshri,
Leela is
are you coming?
No, actually, when I'm going to India for Anmol's brother's engagement. So,
Right. So for all of us that are attending this Ras Leela, I hope all of us, I think Kavita, you're already there in that core group, right? Have you joined the WhatsApp group?
No.
Okay, so please sign up for that WhatsApp group. There's a WhatsApp group for 4 Leela members. We will post that into this call. All conversations and all messages will happen in that 4 Leela group. Okay, so please join that rather than it coming through in separate groups any longer. Be there early enough, and it's like 5 o'clock the Leela is supposed to start. So try and get there by 4 o'clock. And there's a lot of other people have taken up a lot of seva, so they will guide us through the entire time.
So this Ras Leela, no, but we'll be here. I need to see. I have the details. At least. Okay.
Share. Share. Are you able to see the screen? Yeah, okay. So we just wanted to introduce
So,
the basically argument, or you can't, like, they're not supposed to use the word gurus, but they have been the luminaries. They are the saints who have guided us and who have inspired this entire Gita class, this entire Gita Parivar ki Parampara, which was started by Radhe Baba. He's the one that you see on top, and the Babuji, right? So Babuji is the first photograph that you see here. This is Babuji, and with him is Radhe Baba. So Babuji is the Grahast, and Radhe Baba used to follow Sankhya Yoga, and they came together in Gorakhpur, and Babuji used to stay in Gita Vatika. Right? So they came together, and that's how the tradition started. This entire home lighting program, everything comes from, the inspiration comes from the Gita Vatika, the Gorakhpur Gita Press. It was set up by them. Okay? So Sankhya Yogi and a Grahastha Karmi Yogi came together to create our parampara. So we want to just please, start to get familiar with them. It's very, very important to get familiar with our lineage, of how rich it is and how blessed we are, because it's their sadhana that provides help to us constantly. And if we pray to our lineage, they are bound to come and help us in our own sadhana. Then we have Nanaji. The second photograph down below on the left side, Nanaji PM Sinhaji. He's the one who has written this book for us, right? That we read every day. This is DM Sinhaji. Okay. इनकी पूरी the entire autobiography, not entire, but like a little bit of his life history is captured in the Gita book itself.
In the
So
introduction
he-
section.
yeah, in the introduction section, right?
So and the background of him is he got a calling.
I'll come.
He got a calling to come to Gita Vatika, which is what they had set up. And in that calling, he came for just 10 days and he was a very successful, I think, chartered accountant,
IPS officer.
IPS officer. He was very successful. And after those 10 days, he just felt this is what he has to do. And so he dedicated his entire life writing and translating a lot of the thoughts and making it easy for all of us to understand.
And then the photograph you see on the bottom part, right hand side, this is Maiya ji. She is the one who started this entire program. She
Home
was
radiation
in the home radiation program that we are all a part of. This tradition was started by Maiya ji family. So Maiya ji used to at one point of time live in Gorakhpur near the Gita Vatika ashram, and she spent a lot of her childhood in Gita Vatika in that ashram, for a very, very long time. Eventually, she moved to China, Shanghai at one point of time. And in Shanghai, she started the first of the classes, of which Aparna Didi was a part of, right? And from there, the entire thing started, and today it has blossomed into the number of classes that we see today. And I think there's one more.
That's Chugal Didi.
Yeah.
Didi Ma.
This is Didi Ma, Chugal Didi. She is now taking care of everything in Gita Vatika. Okay? And she is going to come here during this time. It's the first time. So in Gita Vatika, actually, they never travel outside of India. They don't go anywhere because they believe that their work is in Gita Vatika, and they dedicate their lives to Gita Vatika work. So this time when the Gita, when this Ras Leela was organized, and Aparna Didi got on a call with Chugal Didi. So Chugal Didi and Maiya ji have been very, very close. They have.
So Chugal Didi, Didi Ma, that's what we
Now
call
we
her.
are going to
We
call her
refer to her as
Didi
Didi Ma.
Yeah.
Her father, when she grew up in Gita Vatika, her father lived his entire life in seva of Radhe Babaji, which is the realized saint. So she's grown up around them, and she has also dedicated her entire life in taking care of the ashram, taking care of members of the ashram, and keeping that spirit alive. She rarely ever travels. She doesn't like to go out. She's very she's very focused on her sadhana within the Gita Vatika Parivar. Her story of how she's coming to Singapore is such a divine experience. Like it's a miracle. And I'll let Tuvina share that story.
So Aparna Didi had gotten on a call with Chugal Didi Ma to tell her about Ras Leela aise ho rahi hai. These are the dates that we have defined, and this is what's going to happen. So she just got on a call to tell her that. And in that call, Didi Ma told her that I'm coming to Singapore because Maiya ji wants me to come there. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the story properly the way Aparna Didi explained to us firsthand. But essentially, she's like, Aparna Didi was taken aback because she doesn't even like, she knows that Didi Ma doesn't ever come. And she told her that Maiya ji is telling me, and she wants to be a part of the Ras Leela. So she is going to come. Don't do anything for me. Do whatever you need to do or whatever you need to do for Maiya ji. Just do that. And I don't even have a passport. I don't know how that will get arranged, but I'm sure it, she's bringing me there. She will arrange for the passport also. The entire passport story, the way the visa came through, it is a miraculous story that, hopefully someday we'll have Aparna Didi tell the story to all of you in person. But she was there, Kaushik Da, he was trying to get the visa done. Before her visa was processed, there were 17 other visas that had been processed, and they had taken so much of effort to get the right photographs. Every time it would get rejected for reason A, reason B, reason C. So they've spent a lot of time getting the other 17 visas in place.
Yeah.
But for Didi Ma,
So
the picture that
to give context, Didi Ma doesn't like worldly things. तो आप दीदी माँ को नहीं बोलते तो दीदी में एक और फोटो खिंचाना है ये ठीक the photo did not come out properly we need another photo. She's like no I don't want to do all that. I don't want to get engaged in sansar. Whatever is there, you use, and what will happen, Your Maya ji wants to come, she'll make it happen.
Yeah, so
right?
she told Maya ji was there and they were like, so they used a photograph that was very grainy, very unclear. They used it at one point of time to get the visa. It was rejected for the quality of the photograph. So they went back to tell her. And before they even could tell her, she said, I'm not going to get a second photograph clip. This is Maya ji wants to come to Singapore, not me. So tell her only to get a photograph clip. Why are you bothering me to go and get a photograph clip? So I'm not going to go. So so they were like, okay, then Kaushik Da changed the name of the photograph to her name and with underscore Geeta Vatika. And then he again, like, Shri Krishna Arpanamastu applied for the visa, and that visa went through. They were surprised, like, how did that even happen? But for her, and they were like, the belief is that obviously that photograph had to be grainy because it is not a single person's photograph. It is Maya ji and Geeta Jugal Didi Ma's photograph. But
So-
it is like miraculous how the whole thing came together so quickly for her. The passport came through, the visa came through. It is only because His grace is there.
So so Aparna Didi keeps telling us that every time she talks to Dadi Ma, right?
Didi Ma.
Didi Ma, Didi Ma na डांट के बात करती है अपर्णा दीदी से, and then she would immediately stop and say, तुम्हारी मैया जी तुमसे ऐसे बात करती थी? And Aparna Didi would say yes. So Aparna Didi can experience that there are, like, Maya ji is talking to her through Didi Ma, and Didi Ma herself, when she becomes calm, she apologizes. कि मुझे ऐसे बात, तुम्हारी मैया जी ऐसे बात करती है, मैं तो बिल्कुल ऐसे नहीं बात करती, ये वो वगैरह. So it's a beautiful relationship that, yeah, I think someday we should invite Didi to our class. Aparna.
So Didi Ma and Kunj Bihari Bhaiya, we will
So
be able
the
to,
next.
so we are going to be able to meet her, meet them and, do their darshan on Sunday in person in a space in at Sovereign. Okay. This one. So this is just samne baithe hai the person. So this is the photograph of Ramji Sharma ji and Kunj Bihari Bhaiya in the last Ras Leela 2018.
At ECP.
Yeah, at ECP they are sitting here. So Ram Sharma ji is the one who used to head the entire Ras Leela, and even last time when he came, he was like close to 90. And his voice was so powerful and so mesmerizing.
He was close to 90. He did not say a single, like, all you had was this expression on his face. Expression of just peace. There is jap happening in this hand constantly. And everything was just that, and you were like, wo baat hi nahi karte hain.
But a very childlike happiness.
Childlike divine happiness. And when he'd come on stage and sing, you could just see it was Bhagwan, like, it's complete transformation of energy. Like, it was just incredible. And that's what they say, ki hum apna vessel, we just keep it as pure, Bhagwan ji will come through us and express. So he left his physical abode recently, and Kunj Bihari Bhaiya is his son. So he's also come to Singapore two times or three times, and he will be leading the Ras Leela this year.
So
Right.
on Sunday when we have the darshan, will be Didi Ma and Kunj Bihari Bhaiya will be there.
So let's go further. This is Kunj Bihari Bhaiya's son. His name is Gaurav. He's also a grahast, so I think he looks young, but he has 2 children and stuff. He will also be joining Kunj Bihari Bhaiya for the Ras Leela. Now, the reason why we're introducing all of them to all of us is so that we recognize the people when we meet them, right? And we recognize their divinity. And by all means, we are free to interact with them, but interact with them with the right bhav, with the right intent, right? This is Akrish and Garima. Okay? Their mother used to live in Gita Vatika, and Akrish used to actually live in Singapore. He used to work with Deloitte in Singapore, and now he lives in Gurgaon. And Didima, who we talked about earlier, the only other place she ever visits is Gurgaon, their house. So their house has become a de facto Gita Vatika 2 type of group. Aparna Didi and Rohit ji jo bhi hain, everything they have to coordinate with Gita Vatika, they coordinate through them. They are like the Sansarik front, so to speak, of Gita Vatika. Because Gita Vatika people don't even answer phone. They don't even look at WhatsApp. They don't answer phone. None of that exists in their lives. So they are like the people who help us with coordination. So they are coming to Singapore to attend the Ras Leela only because Didi Ma is coming. And Didi Ma feels comfortable, so they're going to bring Didi Ma here. Right? And the last but not the least is this is Aparna Didi and Rohit ji. So Aparna,
this photograph is very recently taken when they had gone to Vrindavan for 10 days, which again was a very miraculous way how that trip was even created. So they spent 10 days in the gullies of Vrindavan for managing the logistics of Ras Leela.
And doing the shopping for the necessary things, etc.
Arranging the logistics.
So Aparna Didi story.
So Aparna Didi was one of the students of Maiya ji in Shanghai, right? And when she came to Singapore, when she was moving here, Maiya ji had told her, you will go to Singapore. Wahan Krishna ji is sending you to start this program. So wahan jaake shuru kar dena. She said, "ठीक है Maiya." And then she came here. Ghar liya unhone. The house was like they had just been in the house for 2 days. The entire house was stacked full. They had just received all the boxes, and the entire house was full of boxes. So the second day that they arrived here, Maiya ji called her up and said, "Class start ki?" And she said, "अभी तो आए हैं, अभी तो हम लोग settle भी नहीं हुए हैं, घर पूरा ऊपर है, किसी को जानते नहीं हैं, क्या करेंगे, क्लास किसके साथ start करें?" So Maiya ji said, उन्होंने Aparna जी को डांटा, कहता है तुमको वहां सिर्फ क्लास स्टार्ट करने के लिए भेजा है, इसका और कुछ के लिए नहीं भेजा है, तो ध्यान लगाओ, क्लास स्टार्ट करो, and start the class now. And she was like, "But how do I start? I don't know anybody." She said, "You're not doing class for anybody else, you're doing class for Krishna. So start class with Krishna." And Maiya Didi said, "Okay, I have to do this."
So
that she day started.
So that day she happened to go.
The first class was different. The first class she started in her mandir. She started the first class with Krishna and Radha as her first students. And she sat there, she was alone in that class, and she just started the class because Maiya ji told her. And that very day, she was downstairs at the bus stop, dropping the kids off for their school. And she met Vinika Didi, right?
She met somebody else, and the conversation just turned towards Gita. So Aparna Didi said, "I've started a Gita class."
And that's how she got her very first student. She said, "Oh, I want to join. Can I come and listen to you?" And that's how the class started in the same very day. And since then, the class it just keeps growing. The Ras Leela that happened last time in 2018, we were there. It was 150 attendees. And this year, when it's happening, there are going to be about 350 people.
No, 700.
700 people in total, but 350.
350 from
350 in person.
Two classes.
Yeah, 350 people in person, but overall 700 people are going to attend it in different ways. And Rohit ji, if you ask Rohit ji, he's in I don't even know which bank, but he's in some bank. But you ask him, what do you do for a living? Like, what do you do? He says, I do seva of Gita ji. And then
first time I met him, I had met him after my first round. So, and he'd come for the Purnahoti. So anyway, so I met him, and we were taking prasad. So I was standing next to Rohit ji, and I said, "So what do you do?" And he was just silent. And then I asked him, do you do Gita full time? He says, yes, that is what I do. I do Gita full time. And after that, I didn't know what to say. Like so I just kept quiet. 2-3 years later, I realized, oh, he actually has a job and everything else also. I just think when you meet him, you realize they're just so deeply living the principles, and that's all they think of. That it is just like,
Incredible, yeah.
for us, they're as close to divine as like they're our mom and dad, like as much as
They're
anyone.
amazing. Like you just like being in touch with them, you will realize how they truly live these principles and what we can learn from them. So their son, Nikhil, no,
Pulkit.
Pulkit, sorry, Pulkit. He takes youth classes, two youth classes, and he's been taking classes for a while now. Very divine family. So that's the context. We just wanted to introduce you to our lineage, so you know them, and when you meet them, you're able to recognize them as well. Anyone would like to do closing shlokas?